Welcome to Your Story Matters Masterclass. My name is Rick Olson, and yes, I'm married to Linda. And as you can see, we've decided to switch things up a bit today. I thought you might like to hear Linda's story. Linda, an international speaker and sought-after story expert, is the founder and CEO of Well Through Stories. This former college dean, marriage and family therapist, and award-winning entrepreneur combines decades of public speaking and writing experience to form her own moving personal story in the form of her new book, Your Story Matters, 3 Breakthrough Secrets to Stories that Transform. So Linda, how did you get started?
Well, my story really began at 14 years of age. Through a tractor accident, my 2-year-old brother was killed. I was the one driving the tractor. And as you can only imagine, that day changed my life forever. How do you get up and how do you keep going? I didn't know what to do. The very next day, my dad came to my bedroom door. I was lying in bed and crying. And he said, "You've got to get up. We have to keep going." And so anytime you face a major crisis, that's always the first step, is just getting up, taking that next step. And then when you take that step, then you take the next step and the next step. For me, it meant facing fear around every corner. It was the toughest thing I did. And I didn't know if I'd ever really break through and get beyond this because the pain felt so heavy. But there was a time, 15 years later, as I sat in my counselor's office, she helped me come to terms with forgiving myself. That was a huge breakthrough. And then, I'd be going along fine and everything was great. And then suddenly something would happen that would trigger a past memory. And again, the pain would come up. And I learned over the many years that the key to breakthrough for me was just facing the pain as it came up. And then I would have peace and move beyond it. And when the next thing came up, face that pain and go on. And so after a lengthy journey, I came to complete healing. And I knew at that time I needed to write my book. And as I completed my book, I looked around and I thought, if I've got a story, so does everybody else around me. And then the question came, if everybody's got a story, why are we not sharing our stories every day? And as I did some research, I discovered the number one reason is because most people don't think they have a story. And let me just tell you right now, nothing could be farther from the truth. Everyone has a story, and there are people that desperately need to hear your story. But of course, the key is learning to tell it well. And after much training and coaching and working on this area, doing research, that I knew that was my new calling, to help people tell their story. And so that's been an exciting journey the last few years to put that together and help people do that.
Wow, Linda, you have been on quite the journey. And personally, I've had the opportunity of watch that healing process and to see you really explode in a lot of different areas. So tell us a little bit about what you're wanting to accomplish with your story.
Well, for me, I knew my new mission was to impact 1 million people or more every year through story. And just recently, as I've been thinking about that, I thought, you know what? It's not even so much me impacting that many people, but rather helping others to impact 1 million people or more through story.
That's phenomenal. How do you use story in your speaking?
Well, for me, I clearly remember a coach that I had. She said, and from now on, wherever you are speaking, whether you're doing on a bigger platform or whether you're doing a workshop for a small group, somehow I want you to tell at least part of your story every time you get up to speak. And that was tough because that was just after I'd broken through and finally owned my story. And after I just told it a few times. But I promised her that I would, and I've worked very hard at doing that. So I use story anytime I'm speaking one way or another. I do use part of my story often, especially if I'm just speaking for a few minutes. It'll be a very short story. If I have opportunity for a longer platform, then I'll share in more detail. But I do use story almost every time I speak.
And, I've heard many of those stories as well as your husband. So that's been a fun part for myself. Any gold nuggets that you would leave with the audience today?
I believe the biggest gold nugget that I could leave is just encourage you to start sharing your story. And there are many times where we don't want to go to our deepest pain. That's okay. Share with what you're comfortable in sharing at this time. And then as you become more confident with that, then hopefully you'll also be willing to go a little deeper and maybe share other parts or a little bit more about pain points in your life. But just begin with where you're at. The big part is just learning to share. I don't care if it's on a one-on-one with somebody. It may be with a friend. You may want to practice with a friend or find somebody who's willing to do it and practice with each other. But just begin sharing your story.
So then you're saying once you start sharing your story, you can expand from there and increase your skills.
Absolutely.
Wow. So what gift or product would you like to share with us today?
Well, the gift that I have is I would like to offer everybody a free 30-minute consultation for anyone who wants to work on their story. If you don't know where to get started, I'll help you get started. If you have a story and want to tell it more effectively or don't know how to leverage your story for more business, we can talk about that. That's your 30 minutes. You can ask whatever questions you want related to story, and I'd be happy to address that with you. So just go to my website, wealththroughstories.com, and at the bottom of that home page, you can sign in for a free consultation.
Thank you, Linda, for that generous offer. Linda, I'm going to let you close off our time together. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I just want to thank each of our experts for helping to make Your Story Matters a successful summit. This has been a lot of fun for me. I hope it's been enjoyable for you as well, because without you as experts sharing a story, we wouldn't be able to offer such valuable information on story. And I also want to thank our listeners for participating in the summit. If you didn't get to listen to all of the interviews that you had hoped to, we'll give you until the end of the weekend to do some catch up. The other option is that the upgrade to purchase the summit and listen to them at your own convenience is still available for $47. So thank you again for being part of Your Story Matters Masterclass.